This is my Uncle David. And so, what is your full name?
My name's David Heller,
Where are you from?
originally from New Jersey.
How old were you on September 11th, 2001?
I was in my early 40s.
What do you recall about life before 9/11, like traveling by plane, security at airports or other locations, or terrorist behaviors?
There was always some security at airports, but we didn't take it all that seriously. It was just sort of a formality. We all thought it was kind of ridiculous. The economy had boomed in 2000 and things had slowed down. So that was one of the things that we were thinking about at the time, how the economy would do. But in general, life in New York was good. The general economy was okay. So, people were pretty positive about things. And what happened on 9/11 was a complete surprise.
How did you find out about the attacks? What were you doing at the time?
Well, we had just arrived at a hotel in Wertheim, Germany, just south of Frankfurt. And one of the guys that I work with who sells our equipment in Europe came into our hotel room and said, "You're not going to believe what happened. An airplane just flew into the World Trade Center." And I said, that's strange because I have my pilot's license. I'm familiar with air traffic control around New York City. And it would be very, very unusual for an airplane to fly accidentally into the World Trade Center. Many, many years ago, in I think the 40s, an airplane accidentally flew into the Empire State Building during a storm. But these days, it just didn't make sense. So I thought something must be wrong.
What were your first feelings, emotions, when you heard about the attacks?
First, incredulity. Just, you can't believe this happened. And then to find out that people were being killed, and then to see video of very dramatic, difficult video, people jumping out of the building was very, very disconcerting, very painful.
Yeah.
And then to start thinking, all right, who do I know who works in these buildings? Who do I know? What could have happened to them? I hope they got out okay. So it becomes very personal very quickly rather than just an abstract notion, something you watch on TV.
Were you with other people when you heard about the attacks? What do you remember about sharing that moment?
Yeah, I remember exactly. I was with Jim Beatty, who was our operations manager, Phil Martin, the guy who sells our equipment in Europe. I remember the hotel room in Germany. It was a beautiful, sunny fall day. So I remember all the details of that day.
What is your most vivid memory of that day?
Well, there were a few. Just the sinking realization of what had really happened, other than just an airplane flew into a building, that there had been a terrorist attack and that so many thousands of people had died. The other impression was when I finally flew back. There were many days where we couldn't fly back to the U.S., but ultimately I got a flight to Cincinnati and then a flight from Cincinnati back to New York, and we flew over the tip of southern Manhattan while we were approaching LaGuardia Airport, and you could see the wreckage, the smoldering area. It was still burning. That was many days later.
Wait, so how did they let you fly back?
Well, I had to stay at the airport in Frankfurt for a day just to get on a flight, and then I finally got on that flight, but it wasn't back to New York, it was back to Cincinnati.
But then Cincinnati let you go back?
No, Cincinnati, then there were flights from Cincinnati to LaGuardia, so I could get back to New York. As it turned out, the guy who is the president of our company, who's been a good friend since 6th grade, was getting married that weekend.
Oh.
So I had to get back from Germany to Binghamton, New York. So the flight got in, I guess, Saturday morning, and I grabbed my suit and drove up to Binghamton, and I got there with a half hour to spare before the ceremony started.
Oh my goodness.
But of course, as I was putting my suit on, I realized that I'd grabbed my blue suit top and a black pair of pants.
Oh.
The good news is that the sun had gone down by the time the wedding started, so nobody noticed.
That's good. Were you personally connected to anyone in the towers, Pentagon, or planes? What happened to them?
Yeah. One of my friends walked out of the second tower and he was okay. Three of my friends were working at Cantor Fitzgerald and they passed away.
Oh, that's so sad.
Two were brothers, and of course it left the family utterly devastated.
Yeah. What did you think of the government's reaction to attacks in the days and months after the attack?
You know, I thought that people like Giuliani and Senator Clinton and even President Bush responded appropriately. I think they ultimately, in that moment, responded well. The city responded very, very well, pulled together, as you would hope, and they did. What was also interesting is how the Germans who I was working with in Germany rallied in support of the Americans who were there at the time. Their thoughts and prayers were with us as well. I would not hesitate to say, though, that I thought that the war that essentially was created in Iraq directly as a response to 9/11 was a egregious mistake. And history will not be kind to the neocons who were in favor of that war.
Yeah. How have the additional security measures at airports made you feel?
Oh, I think that they're a triviality. It's not something that bothers me at all. I appreciate the efforts that people go through for safety, but I also realize that it is cosmetic at best. To realize how cosmetic it is, you should go through Ben Gurion Airport in Israel because they know how to do security. What we do in America, it's okay, but it's not foolproof.
Yeah.
Right now I've got a TSA pass, so I go through security very, very quickly.
Yeah. What do you believe is our nation's greatest security threat? Why?
Oh, our nation's greatest security threat is not outside of our borders. Our greatest security threat is inside our borders, and it's our currently divisive state of political discourse. The classic statement, divided we will fall, united we are strong. Nobody outside of our borders can destroy us, but internally we need to maintain unity in order to remain a strong country.
Do you think that terrorism can be defeated? Why or why not?
I think terrorism is a chronic disease, and you can never defeat it, but you can make sure that it doesn't have a lasting impact on our country. Terrorism is a symptom of a problem that springs forth from time to time. It was one of the precipitating reasons for the start of World War I, when Archduke Ferdinand was murdered by an anarchist in Sarajevo. But these things happen, and they will continue to happen. The most important thing we can do is make sure that at the core it doesn't impact our values, our way of life.
How has 9/11 changed you?
Good question. I think that in two ways. One of them is it's sobering. You realize that horrible things can happen to you or very close to you. But there's also an opposite impact, and that is for a survivor of a disaster like this, you create something of I think it's probably called a survivor's mentality, and it often happens in places like London after the Blitzkrieg in World War I, and frankly, it happened in Germany as well after the carpet bombings in places like Dresden and Frankfurt, where people who survive these atrocities come away feeling stronger and more capable, and also very fortunate.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Katie.